Hello and welcome, everyone. We're going to give our attendees a minute or so to join. In the meantime, please feel free to answer the poll we've just launched. The poll question is, what are or were your biggest concerns about moving to a private platform? Was it losing members, cost, fear of new technology, lack of human resources to run the platform, or any other concerns? While you submit your responses to the poll, we'd like to share a bit more about you, our audience members. Uh, we are joined today by people from more than 17 countries. We count people from a variety of job roles, including community managers, data analysts, customer success managers, and a number of C-suite positions, as well as an architect. Thank you all for being with us today. And of course, thank you, Jin, who will be sharing some of her insights shortly. Okay, so we just got the poll results in, and it looks like our audience's biggest concern is other. So outside of losing members, costs, fear of new technology, and lack of human resources to run the platform, other factors won the polling. All right, well, thank you all for taking that short poll there. Please be aware that you can ask questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A box. We'll do our best to answer them live at the end of the session. But if we're unable to do so, we'll follow up in an email after the webinar. So without further ado, let's get started. My name is Choute, implementation specialist here at Hivebrite, and I'll be your moderator and host for this incredible webinar, Public Social Networks versus Private Online Communities. What's best for your community? Our guest today is Jin Stephens, the author of the New York Times and USA Today bestseller, Fast, Feast, Repeat, and Delay, Don't Deny, Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle, an Amazon #1 bestseller in the weight loss category. Jin has been living the intermittent fasting lifestyle since 2014. This lifestyle shift allowed her to lose over 80 pounds and launch her intermittent fasting website, Facebook support groups, 4 self-published books, and 3 top-ranked podcasts, Intermittent Fasting Stories, the Intermittent Fasting Podcast with co-host Melanie Avalon, and the Life Lessons Podcast with co-host Sherry Bullock. With all of that, she still found time to be with us here today. So thank you, Jin, and everyone, please welcome the incredible Jin Stephens from Delay, Don't Deny Social Network.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for that great introduction. I'm really glad to be here today with everybody.
No, fantastic. And we love having you here, and, happy to be discussing, this important topic of moving from, the public social networks to an online private community such as Hivebrite. So shall we just jump right into it with the first question?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So Jin, first question. Why did you create your community and who it's for? So essentially, you have a great community. I was your implementation specialist. I helped you with getting the community up and running. You've done an amazing job to get the community up and running so quickly, in record time, like quicker than a lot of communities that I've worked with. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
For those that don't know the Delay, Don't Deny story, could you tell us how it came to be?
I would be glad to. So I was a classroom teacher, an elementary teacher for 28 years. And through that, I struggled with my weight. And thanks to intermittent fasting, as you said in the introduction, I lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting. And as a teacher, I just couldn't keep it to myself. So I started telling my friends about it. And I started, joining Facebook groups that were about intermittent fasting. And that led me to start my very first Facebook intermittent fasting group in 2015 after I'd lost the weight, just really to support myself and my friends who were now also doing intermittent fasting after watching me go through it. Well, over the past 6 years since starting that very first small group, it grew to almost 500,000 members from around the world. I had one main group, the Delay, Don't Deny intermittent fasting support group. And then I had some smaller groups that also provided more in-depth support for members. Like we had one called the Advanced Group and another one for another specific style of intermittent fasting. And as time went on, you can imagine managing a Facebook group that large was very, very difficult, or a community that large. I was spending so much time managing it, and, people kept joining and joining. And I was like, this is just not a manageable use of my time. You have to consider the return on investment of your time. And it became very much, like traffic management, like approving pending posts, approving memberships, making sure everyone was being nice. That's very important, having that welcoming climate. And, we heard feedback from members all throughout the years that, our groups were just the nicest little corner of Facebook, and they loved our welcoming and positive community. But it took a whole lot behind the scenes to keep the group so positive and warm and welcoming. And it was also often not as pretty behind the scenes. Members would get upset no matter what we did. And so, I started, when I wrote my New York Times bestseller, I started writing it in I guess 2019. And I didn't say the word Facebook a single time in that book on purpose, because I knew that what I was doing was unsustainable. And so I was already thinking ahead to, I probably need to pivot to something. I didn't know what, I didn't know when, but I knew that there was going to have to be something different, just because it's difficult to manage something that large. My mission has always been, no matter what platform I was on, to provide high quality support with the best information possible. I wanted to foster a spirit of community. And, the more work I put in, it also became nice to monetize the work that I was doing.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And I'm sure, Facebook would have loved the free publicity in your books by mentioning them. Hopefully in your next book, you can mention Hivebrite, but we won't discuss that in here. But fantastic. And I love the 500,000 people. That's the equivalent to a sizable US city right there. That's crazy.
I know.
Dive into
Shocking.
that. Exactly. So we'll unpack that and dive into that a little bit more as we head into this podcast. You do the podcast, this webinar here. But we want to jump into another poll right now before we hop into our second question. So we have a poll up for all of our attendees, and the poll is, we'd like to know, what platform are you currently using to manage your community? So Jen mentioned Facebook earlier. Facebook happens to be one of the options. Also, LinkedIn, Slack, WhatsApp groups, Hivebrite, or another private community platform not named Hivebrite. So go ahead and give us your responses in that poll, and I'll be sure to allow you all to have a couple of seconds or so to fill out those responses before I see what the leading selection is. All right. There you go. Okay, so it looks like most people here with us today are using another private platform outside of your traditional social platform. So as Jen said, she was previously running her community on Facebook, so we'll unpack that a little bit more. So Jen, before you're running your community on Facebook, what made you want to switch to a private community management platform such as Hivebrite, which you're on right now? Was there any particular incident that triggered that move from Facebook to Hivebrite?
I initially had no desire to move from Facebook. I was wondering how I was going to continue to manage it as it got bigger. But Facebook was free. It was what I'd been using since I started, since we all joined Facebook. When was it? 2008? I don't know. Whenever we all joined Facebook. And
I was
it was
2003 in college, I think.
Oh gosh.
2005. 2003 Facebook started. 2005 for me. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, it was what we were used to. And again, like I said, it was free. But and it was working for me. But, my literary agent put a little bug in my ear back in maybe mid 2020. She said, get ready for life after Facebook. Just have a plan, have an exit plan, because you're guests on Facebook's platform. And I was like, oh, that's nuts. It'll all be just fine. Facebook's going to be here forever. It's what we're doing. But then, we started to hear stories about Facebook, cracking down on health groups, for example, health information in general. We started to hear stories of groups that Facebook had closed overnight. For example, one of my friends has a friend who was running a cooking group. Okay, cooking. Is there anything more innocent than cooking? Right. And she had about 10,000 members. And she went to bed one night, woke up the next day, and something had happened overnight in her group. Some kind of, I don't know, argument. She wasn't there. She was sleeping. And Facebook had closed her group completely. It was gone. And also she had been like banned from Facebook. Like her personal profile was no longer active. And, you hear stories like that here and there. But I realized, and my agent was right, I could lose my entire community that I had built for all these years in just boom, like that. And with the poll that you just did, while the largest answer was other platforms, half of the other answers were platforms that are free, like LinkedIn and Slack. And, a lot of people are on Instagram now. And again, those are all platforms where, you're very much a guest and you've got to follow the rules that are in place. And, we're not trying to break any rules. We're not trying to get around anything like that. As I said, I've got that elementary teacher background. So I'm very much want to follow rules. I'm a rule follower. But the problem is a lot of Facebook these days is being run by, the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of mistakes. Like we started getting weird alerts to hate speech and bullying, and that would come up, and we'd get them, the moderators, the admins, we'd get them. For example, we're intermittent fasters. And so a big part of becoming an intermittent faster is becoming fat adapted, because when you're fasting, your body is tapping into your fat stores. And so, for example, one of our moderators one day was answering a question of a member, and she said, well, once you're fat adapted, you'll feel a whole lot better. Well, that was flagged as hate speech. You're fat is what the artificial intelligence picked up instead of your fat adapted, which is perfectly in context. But because this was a moderator who made that comment to someone, the group was dinged. And this is in our group with 300,000 members. We got an admin alert that said, this does count. It was a moderator who was using hate speech. If this continues, your group can be shut down. And I'm like, wait a minute, that is really bad, because I don't have email addresses. I can't find these people again. It will just be poof, will be gone. So that's when I got serious and started looking around to see what was there. I also realized Facebook, at some point, things were always changing, but they made it possible so you could see the engagement data for every post that you made. And what I started to realize, I really started to look at that. Like I would post a really important announcement that I wanted everybody to see, and I would realize people weren't seeing them. So I started to, drill down in the Facebook engagement data, and I would realize that in a group of 300,000 members, an announcement that I would make and pin and mark as an announcement, maybe only 500 people would see it. And it's because Facebook's algorithms decide what to show to people. And so that was a huge problem. I wasn't able to make important announcements to the group like, hey, we're going to be changing the way we're managing the group, and I want everyone to know this. I couldn't shoot out an announcement and be guaranteed that everyone would see it. And so I realized that was a huge drawback. So I was like, that gave me even more reason to think, we've got to find somewhere else where we can have, first of all, we're able to say what we need to say without dings or feel like, we're breaking rules that we're not really breaking. And also, we don't want to lose contact with our community. We want to be able to talk about what we need to talk about, control the community, and also have the email addresses of everyone who's part of the community.
No, and yeah, you said it best. You are essentially at the mercy of Facebook, whether it be posting content and content being posted by others. Facebook pretty much dominated what your community could do within the platform. And there wasn't that space for you to be authentic and genuine and say as you please. So thank you for definitely sharing that. But with your move to Hivebrite, were there any particular points of concerns before moving? Because you're stepping into the unknown, and the unknown for some folks is, as we saw with the first poll, is something that people are fearful of. Were there any concerns on your part moving over to a private platform such as Hivebrite?
100%. I was terrified. Would anybody follow us? I really had no idea. Would people be willing to pay for something that they felt like was free? Our advanced Facebook support group, all the members had read at least one of my books. And so they got great support from me. But I was like, well, are they going to be willing to make a change and understand why I'm making this change? And, I didn't want people to say, oh, it's just all about the money. Jen just wants to make money. And she's going to, anyway, that was my big fear, charging people for what was free. Would it ruin everything? Would everybody leave? And also, what would we do about the Facebook groups? Did I want to continue to keep I had 3 main ones that I was managing, all those smaller ones too. But out of those 3, do I keep all 3 going? Which ones do I close? How do I make this work? And so that really was the hardest part, figuring out how to make a transition, protect the community, make the transition happen in a positive way, help everyone understand why we were making the transition. And there was so much fear all along the way.
There's always fear of uncertainty. So how did you get the members to make that migration over? Because we talked about, there's going to be a shift in, Facebook being a free platform out there to, Hivebrite being, a membership platform. Were there any tactics, strategies that you put in place to ensure maximum adoption and a good number of folks out of that 500,000 pool that you have on Facebook would come over to Hivebrite?
There really were. And, people have to have a reason to come over, because think about this. The people who are on Facebook and very active on Facebook, like the way I was just what you're used to, and it's what you're doing. So trying to learn a new platform is not easy. Mm-hmm. So for all of us, because you've gotten into the habit of doing this one thing all the time. So I had to think about, how are we going to design this? How are we going to meet the needs of the members? And knowing that not everyone is going to make the move off whatever platform they're comfortable on. But the first thing we needed to do was really build it. So I had a large team of volunteer moderators who were working in the Delayed on Tonight community. And my largest group, that is still over 300,000 members today, we took away the ability for members to make posts back in 2020, right around June, about a year ago. We took their ability to make posts away, because it was a beginner group. A lot of people would just kind of wander in and didn't know anything about it. And so before we took away the members' ability to post, we were having over 1,000 posts a day that all individually had to be approved by moderators and then managed. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine things would get out of hand really quickly. So in that group, members were not able to post. That we just have like daily threads where they're organized and run by the moderators, like Ask a Moderator, or today it's Wednesday. They have Wednesday wows where they can share, their successes. So that group was running in that way. Mm-hmm. So I had to think, with the other 2 groups, they were smaller. One of them had maybe 35,000 members. The other one had around maybe 90,000 members, but they were both running pretty smoothly. We still had membership approval and post approval, but the members were allowed to post. But, I had to really think, where am I going to focus my attention? Am I going to be able to still run these groups, or the moderator is going to try to run all these groups? And the hard answer was no. We can't have all the groups on Facebook and have a separate place. There needs to be a reason for people to want to come over to another platform. Because if you leave everything on Facebook, then people are, my community, not everyone would have been willing to transition over. So that was something important to keep in mind. So I talked to the moderators, reached out to them. There was also a spinoff group of admins who had started spinoff groups that were intermittent fasting support, but I wasn't running them, but they were running them. And I said, who wants to join us? Who wants to come along and try this new platform and see? So we had a core group of people that joined us. Me and 2 of the leads that Al also got to work with, Sherry and Roxy, who really helped me build it. They're just amazing. I'm a teacher at heart. Sherry works in healthcare. Roxy is a speech and language pathologist. So, we're the people who get things done, in our professions. That's just what we're used to do. So that's why we were able to set it up so quickly. But we built groups that we knew people would want, things that we thought people would be interested in. And we built it all, and we populated it first with the moderators and the facilitators, and they were all in for free. And, we put them in that role, and we made sure every group that we built had facilitators in place before we started inviting the public. And by the way, that was March. We just hit our 3-month anniversary or month-iversary. I don't know, the other day, which is pretty exciting. But, when we first rolled it out to the members of the groups, we didn't just immediately like, here, this is close. I wasn't even completely sure yet what I was going to do, but when I saw the members' reactions, they ranged from everything from, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is exactly what I wanted. I've been wanting to get off of Facebook. That was, people, after that documentary came out, The Social Dilemma. Did you see
Oh
that,
yeah,
Al?
I saw that. I love that. Yeah, it's crazy how the algorithms work. But yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
A lot of people had seen that. And, with the whole way Facebook was cracking down on health information, they might decide tomorrow that they don't want to have intermittent fasting groups. The intermittent fasting is not something they want to endorse. And then boom, they're all shut down. So, I let the community know the reasons why we were doing it. And there was some not so positive feedback. I'm going to be honest with you. People were mad. People who were in the community that had been there for a long time were not all happy with the decision to move off of Facebook. And that was difficult working, with people who were like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're ruining everything. What are you doing to the community? We're like, no, we're changing the community. We're keeping this one group open. So we decided to keep the large one open that had over 300,000 members. So if people need support and inspiration, it's still there. We're calling that one our freemium group. Yeah, that it's free. Join that group for free. We will answer your intermittent fasting questions. I love Facebook completely. I'm not there, but the moderators will answer your questions on the daily Ask a Moderator thread. There's still plenty of, inspiration in the other daily threads. But if you want more, if you want the ability to post, if you want the ability to interact more, if you want me, since I'm not on Facebook anymore, then it's going to have to be coming over to the Delay Don't Deny social network. And so we've had about 5,000 people have joined the new platform. And, my goal was
In
to have
3
enough
months,
people.
which is a good migration. 5,000 in 3 months. Come over paid, folks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad. We kept the price very low. I feel like it was low. Our price point is $59.95 if you want to join for a year, which works out to $4.99 a month. I mean, that's one latte.
Starbucks. Exactly.
Yeah,
Starbucks.
it's one latte. And,
Yeah.
they can listen to my podcast, Intermittent Fasting Stories. They can stream it ad free instead of having to listen, with all the ads. So that's a bonus. They can ask me anything at any time. I have, the Ask Jen group. So I wanted to make sure that there were some perks for people who wanted to join. People can also join by the month for $9.99 a month, and they might be like, "Yeah, this isn't for me," and then they can quit after after the first month, and that's fine. But we're finding we've been able to attract a lot of people who had never been on Facebook.
Oh,
And I hadn't even thought of that because, like my sister never joined Facebook, and you think, well, who didn't join Facebook? Well, there are people out there who would love to have community, but they're not on, the social media, the big ones. They just, for whatever reason, never joined those. And so we were able to attract people to the community, and that made me feel really great.
yeah. No, that's a great call out there because I know a lot of folks personally that aren't on the social platforms. Like, how are you not on here? But yeah, if this is a private network, that I guess that invites the folks that want to be a part of your community, but yeah, they never had the opportunity because they weren't gonna jump into head first and jump into a social platform such as Facebook. Yeah.
Exactly. And keeping it affordable makes it so that people can join. Cost is not really a barrier to entry for most people if they really want to be part of it, because Facebook is free, but you know what they say, if something is free and you can't find what they're selling, then you're the product.
Yep, you're the product.
Yes. So
I'm the product.
You're the product. We're the product on Facebook. And so we're not advertising, in our Delay Don't Deny social network. We're just there to find community and support. And it's actually very refreshing.
Yeah. Has it been because you mentioned sort of you have the freemium model on Facebook, and then you have this behind the wall, content that you can't get anywhere else besides the Hivebrite platform. How do you facilitate organic content within the community? Like, how do you come about bringing in new and fresh content to keep these folks, coming into the platform?
Well, I realized from day one that I couldn't personally provide enough content to keep it going. It either had to sink or swim based on the members.
Mhm.
So, I have a daily prompt that I throw out, but that gets some interaction, but it really had to be, like as a teacher, for example, um, when you're working with kids, sometimes you can just throw out a bunch of toys and see what they play with. That's kind of what we did when we built it. We threw out a bunch of toys and wanted to see what they would use. And so we were really, like I said, counting on the members. It was designing groups that we knew the members would want to be a part of. We knew they would interact. It was putting the people in there who would be, making sure every group had the facilitators who would be there to engage with the members, because it's really all about finding engagement. And if the members are coming and people are responding to them, then they will come back and they will become plugged into the community. And so that's really what we've found that's happening. The members are coming back and they are creating the content. And it's, with all the tools that Hivebrite has available, that was one thing I was really excited about. For example, the events tab, having the members have the ability to create events. And that was something I tried to do on Facebook, but what I didn't like about the way Facebook works is, again, the algorithm and how it only shows you certain things. So we tried to have a Delay Don't Deny Connect group that I started, several years ago. But it was impossible to organize it. Like, it was supposed to be for members to connect with each other. But, I'm here in Augusta, Georgia. Let's say someone from Scotland is trying to create an event and they're trying to do it in this Facebook group. There was no way you just had to like throw it out there and hope other people from Scotland would see it or that sort of thing. So what we're finding in Hivebrite is, with the events tab, people are starting to play with that tool. And I think in the Denver area, one of our members who lives in the Denver area, you're able to find people and tag them. And so they've had 2 meetups.
Oh, wow. Nice.
In their area, all in person. And so, they're connecting with each other in person, which is what I tried to do all that time ago on Facebook, but it really was kind of a dud because of the way the Facebook groups work. And it wasn't really a tool that you could use. And so also we're finding, people are scheduling Zoom meetups. Like, for example, I think in New Zealand, they're having a Zoom meetup for the community. Or they already had it. It's been on the events tab. And so, they've had them in the UK where they've had these Zoom meetups. So the community they're getting to know each other, and they're doing that organically. And that's the beauty of it, having the tools, letting the members know that they're there, and they're like, oh, I want to do that too. Like somebody mentioned on the one from, Colorado. You're like, oh, I wish I had something. I'm like, do it. Go to the people tab, search for people who live in your area. I think she was from Kansas. I'm like, search for Kansas. You can find the people. So Hivebrite has those tools that allow the members to connect with each other in a meaningful way. And everyone is looking for community. That's really all that we want. We want to find somewhere to belong, somewhere that we have meaningful interactions with other people. And, watching this unfold, it's only been 3 months, and watching it unfold is just really exciting.
No, and I love how you mentioned casually. Yeah, we have folks in New Zealand, the UK, Scotland. You have literally a global community, and community right now is literally, within arm's reach. Your laptop, and boom, you're connected to everyone within your community platform, which is phenomenal. So you mentioned the 3-month anniversary of your platform being up and running and people being on there on the your Hivebrite community. Is there anything you would have done differently to improve the transition, especially given the number of groups that you had on Facebook?
Right. Well, we learned that we actually started with too many groups at first.
Oh, on Hivebrite.
Yeah, in Hivebrite, we had too many groups. We didn't know, with the community as large as we had, we really had no idea if 500 people would come or 300,000. We didn't know. I'm glad 300,000 didn't come in many ways, because it would have been still very hard to manage, even on
that
a
would have
great
been a great story, though.
It would have been a great story, but 5,000 is a really nice number right now. We're enjoying that, but we had no idea. So we wanted to be ready, but we found that some of the groups just didn't get traction. So we might have, going back, the one thing that we would do differently is we wouldn't have built quite so many groups. on Hivebrite at the beginning, because we started with over 100 groups. And we was like, all right, like I said before, the analogy of throwing out the toys to see what they played with. Well, there were some they didn't play with. Some of
Yeah.
those groups, they did not get traction in there. And it was kind of like, if you had one, then you're like we found one for, like for moms, whatever. Well, then we need one for dads, but then we didn't have a lot of men. So the dads weren't using it. And so when you have groups that are inactive in your community, that really does not help people have a great experience, because they might post something and no one responds to them. And they're like, well, why am I here? I'm talking to myself. So we've been, we've been actively managing and keeping our eye on that, and, consolidating groups where we need to, and letting people know why we're doing what we're doing. Like, hey, we noticed let's just throw out an example. The Orange Theory fitness group hadn't had a lot of stuff going on. So we're going to consolidate that one, go to the Fitness for Fasters group instead, and start a forum, because we've got the forums feature. So use the forums feature within the groups, possibly instead, in lieu of starting separate groups. Because I want to talk about a challenge with the platform that's not Facebook, after being used to Facebook for all this time, is becoming an active consumer versus a passive consumer. And that's really, really, really important. You have to really kind of train the members to be more active, because think about Facebook. When most of us have logged on to Facebook, unless you're actively working in a group, when you log on to Facebook as a consumer of Facebook, you just are scrolling your feed, you're looking at what they show you. Well, Hivebrite doesn't work like that. There is a live feed, but we're not using an algorithm to pop stuff in front of your eyeballs. And so you've got to be mindful. You've got to say, do I want to know what's happening in the Fitness for Fasters group? You've got to actually go there to the Fitness for Fasters group and see what they're doing there. We're not just going to throw it at you in one big merged live feed. So we've had to teach people, no, you're in charge here. And sometimes people say, well, we want to see it. And I'm like, you really don't. I promise you don't. Because in Facebook, some posts would never get shown to anybody. Like a really important post, we would sometimes, as moderators, have a post, and we would go back to it. And it had been a really good post, but it just hadn't grabbed the algorithm. And so it got no feedback. Even in a group of 300,000 people, posts were getting lost. And so we really don't want to rely on an algorithm to decide what to show you, because it may or may not show you the things you want to see. So we have to teach people to use it in a more proactive way. So when you're making the transition, let the community know, here is how we're not like Facebook. And even though that's what you're used to, here's why it's okay for it to be different. And you've just got to learn how to use it differently.
No, fantastic. Yeah, and that is true, because people are used to Facebook and they may be stuck in their ways, but this is a whole different animal, and people need to be adaptable. And at times it's up to the administrators of the community managers, to sort of set the precedent of what this actually is. So I guess before we hop into the questions that are coming in from our attendees, we'll do one last question here, which is, I actually saw that question in the chat from one of our attendees, but how do you define and measure success in your community and with your members? So what is success for you thus far, 3 months into your platform being live on Hivebrite?
That really is a great question. And we are still very much figuring it out as we go. I'm a pro at running Facebook communities. I was in the Power Admin group. You have to be hand selected by Facebook and invited. So I know how to run a Facebook community. Running a community off of Facebook is different. And so, the benchmark that matters to me the most is, are members using it, and are they finding value? If members are using it and they're finding value, then I consider it to be a success. What I'm kind of using as an unofficial metric is what's happening when people get to the end of their month. Are they leaving? Are they renewing? What are they doing? And so, every day we do have people, I'm going to be honest, every day we have new people join, but every day we have people who say, after the end of the first month, I'm just not going to renew. I'm finding that my behavior I'm not able to transition off Facebook yet. And that's okay. Some people are not ready to make that move because their time is limited. And that does not mean you're a failure. And that's important. You can't let it hurt your feelings if people don't want to come somewhere else because they are embedded in Facebook. The more, or whatever your platform might be, the more embedded they are in that platform, the harder it's going to get them to move over. We found that to be true. But every day I also get messages from members that said, hey, I signed up for the month and I want to change to the yearly. So we have that every day. And whenever that happens, I'm like, all right, this is success. They're finding value. They're using it. It's a success. So you have to understand there will be attrition. People will leave. Don't take that personally, but pay attention to the positive signs. If you're growing and people are staying engaged, then that it shows you it is a success.
Yeah. No, and you've done it already on Facebook and transitioned over to Hivebrite. So I'm sure there's more success and growth down the road with your current community. Right.
I hope so. That's my plan. I want to continue to provide support in a place that's positive and interactive. And, I don't have to be everywhere and do it all myself. That's the most important thing for people to keep in mind that are starting their own community. You cannot touch everything with your hands every minute. You have to have people, you let people run it, let people manage it, let people help you. I don't have to be everywhere. The groups are running themselves, but I'm where I need to be. Yeah. And I'm interacting when I need to.
100%. Jeff Bezos doesn't have a hand in everything in Amazon. He's going to space and,
right.
And it's still, my packages are still going to get delivered. So you don't have to have a hand in everything. Fantastic. Well, great. I think now it's time to take some of the questions from the audience. So we're going to do live questions from the audience. So get those questions in, everyone. I'm going to click into the Q&A section to see what we have in here. Let's see. Oh, okay. So here's a question. So how do you encourage members to invite others to the community? That's a great way of, building upon what you already have, but how do you encourage members to invite others to the community?
That's a great question. And we're finding that it's happening, like one of our power members who's there all the time and who just loves it. She's like, oh, I'm so excited. My brother and his wife are starting intermittent fasting, and I'm going to, buy them memberships to the community so that they can be here too. And that really is the key. They do it. If the community is giving them value, that's your secret sauce, is providing a community where people want to be. Yeah. If people want to be there and they're finding value, they will tell people about it. And so you just have to make sure that your community is strong and providing value, and then they will tell other people. There really isn't a mechanism that I can reward them for doing it or anything yet. Maybe one day we can have promo codes. I think Hivebrite is always working on new things, but I think that's in the works now, right?
That's in the works right now. Promo.
That's what I thought I saw that on an update, but there are different things you can do. But, right now we're just sitting back and letting it happen, letting people, kind of organically invite others. And we're still dropping, things into our freemium Facebook group that we have. We're still letting people know, even though I love Facebook, Roxy and Sherry are still there, and plus other moderators as well. And so they make some posts, like they'll find something from the Delay Not Deny social network on Hivebrite. Like someone will share their before and after photos or an amazing post. And then Roxy or Sherry will put together a post to share in the freemium Facebook group and say, here's what we're doing in the social network, join us there. And so we're constantly kind of, dipping it in. And then every now and then somebody will come in, they're like, I'm not paying for anything. It should all be free. We're like, thank you so much. All right. We understand.
Right. I see that about a lot of subscription platforms, but I continue to pay for it. So it is. Tying into, what you mentioned about, Roxy and Sherry, what's your strategy for managing and retaining your moderators?
Well, the moderators that are really working out well on Hivebrite are the ones that really just took to it. Not everybody did, even the moderators. We had some moderators who were running some of the spinoff groups, like I said, and they were running the spinoff groups. So they were like the power Facebook users. And not all of them made the transition over to another platform very well. They're like, I'm just on Facebook. I'm just going to stay there. And we're like, that's okay. We're okay with that. Stay where you're comfortable. But it was just a matter of finding the people that were willing to make the transition and felt like they wanted to give back. Because it's really, our community is very much driven by members supporting each other. Yeah. So having the members and the moderators feel like they're giving back, like they're supporting one another, they want to help. Mm-hmm. And so that's really the key. And you're having the moderators with the free membership, having them salted throughout, having the feeling of the ownership and the buy-in and the fact that they really are helping other people. Because that's really what we're all about. It's having the community, helping one another, giving back, feeling like it's strong, and recognizing when you have someone great and saying, how would you like to be a facilitator? And they're like, I would love to be a facilitator. People want to help. It's like, all right, you can be a facilitator, and now you're going to get the free membership. And so and again, it's having free members is a plus when you have them, when they're helping. Sure. I want to talk about something that we haven't mentioned yet, but it's probably something others who are thinking about starting a Hivebrite community may be thinking about. And that is, should you charge for every member, or do you want to have like a free trial kind of a thing, or a freemium on Hivebrite? We actually decided not to do that. Other than the moderator,
premium, like a free trial model, where
right, or even I know Hivebrite lets you have, people can sign up to be for free, but they only have access to like maybe the live feed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there's other things behind the paywall that they can then have access to at different levels, right? We decided not to do that because, again, we had a very large community with 500,000 combined members, and we knew that if we made it so that people could just join for free and try for free, or have a free limited, like if you're free you can look at this and only this, we could have had 300,000 people join for that for free. And they're taking up membership spots, but they're not really doing anything. They're not really there. And they're never planning to, do the paid option. So we decided that it was worth it not to do that. We decided every member who's here, unless you're a facilitator that you're actively helping out, every other member is going to be a paid member. And that way, it kept the looky-loos away, I guess,
the casually, what is it? Ghost users that are just looking, browsing, but not contributing to the platform.
Yeah. Exactly. And, even though the cost is low per member, once you get past a certain threshold, it's still there. We didn't want to be paying for 300,000 people who are just, taking up some space over there. And so, we have before people log on and pay for the membership, we have some things that they can see strategically. Like, we let them see the groups, not in the groups, but they can see the names of the group. So for people who are, may wonder, what do we have them? You can see, if you go to dddsocialnetwork.com, you can see what we're showing the public. And so they can kind of browse around, see what groups are there, and then, see if it looks like for them before they even put in their email and sign up and decide they want to become a member. But nobody is behind the curtain unless they're paying. And we decided that was important for us, rather than having the free trial or anything like that. We were like, no, you can join for 1 month. And then if you don't like it, cancel. It's $9.99 for the month. That's 2 lattes. You take the risk.
Yeah, 2 lattes that you're probably going to have today alone. So,
and when people are paying for something, they have a different level of engagement. I also wanted to make sure to talk about that. Anyone who's running a free group of wherever you're running it, you're going to have 2 different issues. Our biggest 2 problems were, and I hate the word trolls. I just hate it. But you're going to have trolls, and you're also going to have spammers. They were very, very crafty. Those spammers on Facebook, they would have fake profiles, and they would join our group. And even though we had post approval turned on, they would make a post that was perfectly fine. We would approve it. Then they would edit it and change it to this spammy thing.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Like we had something called getting pancaked. I don't know what it was. They had this pancake post they would change it to. It was this keto pancake. We don't know why, but it would
Yeah.
start off as one thing. Then they would turn it into that pancake post with this link. And I don't know what happened if you clicked on that link, but it was worth it. They kept coming back with that crazy pancake post over and over. But they're not doing that on Hivebrite because they've paid even $4.99 a month, with the 59 for the year, that keeps them from being there. And we're also not having any of that troll like behavior. That doesn't mean that members are never going to disagree or have like a debate about something in a positive way. We've seen some discussions like, that's not really what I do, but it's all been so positive. We have not had a single time in 3 months where we've had to admin intervene in member interactions, because even a small amount that they're paying, that barrier to entry keeps the community quality really, really high. The people that are there want to be there. They're paying to be there. They're not on Facebook for a reason, because we know how that has devolved into people, the keyboard warriors and the arguing. And I have no desire to live like that. I don't want to spend my life trying to, moderate arguments.
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
help people with intermittent fasting. And Facebook had turned into, it was just us moderating problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that makes sense. So ultimately, and we had one of the questions in the Q&A, which was who can join your I guess your community, which
Anybody.
we answered anybody, including the trolls, as long as you pay to come in. So the trolls
but they're not going to. We have found the trolls have not been willing to pay. And if they did, if someone was absolutely awful, I would have no problem saying, here is your refund, goodbye.
Yep.
Do not come back. We're not going to have that in the community. And they know me. One thing that's been helpful is my podcast. And so people, whether they know me or not, they feel like they do because they've heard me talk so much, and they know my kind of vibe. So the members seem to tend to have that kind of vibe as well, which is good.
So do you have another question in here? Do you have any best practices for onboarding members, getting them acclimated when they're in the platform, coming into the platform for the first time?
We really don't. We have a couple of welcome emails, as they're coming through onboarding. We tested out the onboarding process to see how it felt coming in as a member. And so I went in and, crafted all those emails that go to them to make sure that they sounded like me and that it gave them the right information, so that then we don't have to do a thing. They just join and then they jump right in. And the thing about Hivebrite is, especially if people have been on Facebook, while it's different enough that you have to learn your way around, it's similar enough that it feels intuitive, which is one reason that we went with Hivebrite. It feels very much like what we're used to, even though you have to learn a few things. We do have, I can't remember what it's called, like navigating the Delay Don't Deny social network. There's a tab, and I believe that's available for public view, the navigating the social network tab, so that it kind of shows like a little photo tutorial with screenshots of some of the things that you can do while you're a member, like how to adjust your notifications and where to go and what to do. So we did create that. But really, once people, they're jumping in, they're finding it. And, our community we've got a lot of people who are older, a lot of older women who are like 60 years old, and they're figuring it out.
Yeah, no, yeah. I tell people all the time that, Hivebrite is really intuitive. Once you hop in there, people are naturally going to be inquiring about what's in here. So they'll click on every single tab and get the gist of where.
And nothing bad happens. They can't mess it up. There's nothing they can do that's going to ruin it.
No, they're not going to break anything.
Yeah, exactly. So people they're coming in and they're figuring it out, and they're finding what they need.
Cool. And I think we'll take one last question. This is actually, we have some more questions in there. So we'll do the last few questions here, which this one I believe we answered, but it's, what's to stop the pancake people from paying and spamming? So how do you handle it? Which, you mentioned, how do you handle it if they bought a yearly subscription and started spamming. So you would.
I would be shocked if they did. But
Okay.
if they did, if we had somebody now, first of all, we do have terms and conditions set
Yeah.
up, and so you can have that as part of your terms and conditions and say, if you join and spam the group, we are going to block you and not refund your money. I mean, you can absolutely put that in a term and condition if you want to and have it spelled out. And then, I mean, if they're joining and spamming like that, then, they're not going to be, they should expect it. But hopefully we won't have that happen. We haven't had it happen yet.
Yeah. And I've read some terms and conditions in my day, but in Hivebrite, yes, as you mentioned, you can have the terms and conditions in there and let them know, hey, this is the stipulation, and you don't abide by it, poof,
Our worst spamming that we've ever had in Hivebrite is like, we have people who have their own podcasts who are like sharing about their own podcasts. We're like, okay,
Oh, so
share
they're
about
plugging themselves.
They're plugging themselves. We actually created a group for that. So we created a group for content creators to share their plugs for their stuff. So we anticipated that. And so we're like, go share it there.
That's a smart move. And I love that, thinking outside of the box and utilizing what's there to sort of, make a space for those individuals within your community.
Right.
So so we have a question here. How has your strategy and community changed during the following year? So the pandemic period, were there any specific learnings that you plan to integrate moving forward, either with events or other strategies? So how did the pandemic play into what you have right now with the community?
Well, that's a great point. And I think the pandemic did play a role. And what we're seeing is, as things are opening up, people are able to plan in-person events, but the Zoom events that have kind of popped up, I never would have thought of that, hosting a Zoom event, but the members thought of it. Right. And so they popped them in there, and they're finding that even as things are opening up, they still like doing those Zoom events. And I think, what the pandemic has taught us all is we can pivot and do things differently. Mm-hmm. But some of this pivoting is actually, we can carry on with it. I read something on Apple News this week that, people are not, instead of returning to work, they're quitting their jobs and doing something different and finding remote work, because people don't want to go back to the office. We don't want to go back to fully how we were doing things. We've learned that we can connect with people virtually, like we're doing right here. I've never met you in person, Al, but I feel like I know you.
I know, right?
And if you're in New York, right? If I come to New York, I'm in New York. I'm going to look you up.
Background there.
Yeah,
likewise, I go to Augusta. I'm gonna head down there, and
we're gonna have coffee if I'm in New York. And but you can still connect with people in a meaningful way virtually. Mm-hmm. That's what we've learned over the pandemic. I mean, I knew that already from running the Facebook groups, because we've had some cruises in the past. Delay Don't Deny cruises. Oh, wow. We had two. We were having a third. It was going to be June of 2020, and you know what happened with that? Didn't happen. It didn't. But from the first two cruises, we got together. For the first cruise, somebody came from Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yes, we sailed out of Florida. Somebody came from, I don't know, a small European country that I can't remember which one it was. I can't remember, but a small European country. We had people come from Scotland, all to the United States to go on this cruise with the community. So we know that people want community, but we can also find it virtually. And that's exciting. One day we'll have an in-person event, and we will manage it through Hivebrite. That's how we'll let everybody know where it is and where to go.
No, that's fantastic. And maybe, when we meet, it'll be, on your cruise. I'd love to be on that cruise. That's
awesome.
Fantastic.
It was fun because we're intermittent fasters. We love to eat. People would joke about, wait a minute, a bunch of fasters are going on a cruise. No, we do intermittent fasting because we love to eat. We don't want to diet. We want to eat in our eating windows. So
fantastic. Well, looks like, looking at the clock right now, sadly we're almost out of time. So any last thoughts from your end, Jen? Anything else that you wanted to share with our attendees today? Anything from your end? Last thoughts, statements?
No, just, thank you for being here. And there will be some, some pain points as you transition, but it's really worth it. Take that leap. Don't take things personally, and realize you're there to help make the transition as seamless as possible and provide, for the people who want it. There will be people who want it. There will be people who don't want it. Yeah. And you just have to serve the people who do want it.
Yeah, fantastic. Great, great, great final thought there. And I want to thank, you know, everyone for all of the questions and being here with us today. Jen, once again, thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. Very valuable. And I hope, you know, we get a lot of folks that were in the webinar here and watch this later on that hop into your community and check it out. So hopefully, I can see the influx of people that are joining your community as a result of this webinar. But, what we'll be doing is we'll be sharing the recording of the webinar by email. So if you have any questions, please hit reply on that email and let us know, and we'll be happy to answer all of those questions. A survey link has been dropped in the chat, so you should see that right now. And we would really appreciate it if you could take 1 minute of your time to give us your feedback about today's webinar. So once again, survey in the chat right now, grab that and give us a little bit of feedback of about what you heard, seen today. We would love to hear from you. So once again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next Hivebrite webinar.
Thanks, Al.
All right, thank you, Jen. Have a great one. Bye now.